getting ready for the Climate Caucus here at St. Catherine's Montessori School in Houston. All the kids are going to speak first, and then they will be followed by candidates for 2020 office.
My name is Ruth Scherschel, and this is my friend Isabella Godfrey, and we will be the moderators of tonight's event. Welcome to St. Catherine's Montessori. We're so excited to be hosting the Student Climate Caucus, and we're so grateful to all of you who could make it. A gentle reminder to silence all your cell phones and other noise-making devices.
Hi! Many of you know that last spring, St. Catherine's hosted a climate change symposium. Our title and motto was From Knowing to Acting. So that symposium was the knowing, and this is the acting.
This evening, we will have a 55-minute student panel discussion, followed by 10 minutes during which the panelists will be responding to audience questions. Audience questions will work as follows. So if you look under the chairs along the center aisle are baskets with note cards and writing utensils. If you have a question for the panelists, please write it down on one of the note cards. Around 6:15, our assistant moderators, Alina and Auden, you guys stand up and wave. Alina and Auden will come and collect the note cards. And because of time constraints, we may not be able to answer all of the audience questions, but we'll try.
Following audience Q&As, we'll have some Q&As with our Texas candidates who have joined us tonight. All candidates will be invited to the stage together to sit at the tables, and each one of them will receive 5 minutes of questions with our moderators. Our student panelists will be responding to questions about climate change and clean energy. The goal is to have a balanced discussion and to stay away from potentially polarizing comments. Without further ado, we will now have the panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Clay. I'm an 8th grade student at St. Catherine's Montessori School. I started really being passionate about climate change when I saw the effects that it had in Perth and Beijing, where I lived for many years.
Hello, I'm Rishabh Jagatia. I'm a senior at Memorial High School, and I didn't really know much about climate change until around 2 years ago, when Hurricane Harvey hit, of course. And I've always been a nature guy, but really seeing climate change and how it affects us in so many ways, but seeing also the political inaction just made me want to get involved.
Hi, I'm Ishan Bala. I'm a junior at Straight Jesuit, and I first kind of saw the dangers of climate change was when I was 11 and I started reading the National Geographic magazine and seeing over the past, I guess, like 8 or 9 years, well, rather 5 or 6 years, that nothing has been done about this, and so that's pretty scary, and I want to do something about it.
Hi, my name is Sophia Devereaux. I'm a 12th grader here at St. Catherine's Montessori. Nature has always been a source of great fascination for me. For as long as I can remember, I've been thinking about my relationship with the earth and how I can cultivate that. And that has led me to an internship in environmental education at the University of Idaho, and then I was also a member of the steering committee for our school's symposium on climate change in May. This year, wow. And I'm really interested in how disparate cultures can address climate change and how we can come together as a global community, and I'm really excited to be here with all these cool people.
Hi, my name is Madeline Canfield, and I'm a senior at the Emmy Wiener School, as well as a climate activist with the youth climate organization, the Sunrise Movement, so the Houston hub of that, and this is 0 Hour. I have been invested, I think, in learning about and finding solutions for climate change for a while, as I'd say a lot of us probably are. It's on the news a lot. It's difficult to ignore when it's so pertinent and obvious, but I think my activism really kicked off after watching the 3 sequential 500-year floods ravage various communities across Houston. No one was untouched. And watching my friends, my family, and lots especially of young people feel this injustice for the first time actually happening, it became evident that climate change wasn't this existential problem of our future, but that too, but not only that, it was already something flourishing and manifesting in my city already, so it felt pertinent to act already now.
Hi, my name is Franklin Wu. I'm a 9th grader at Lemoore High School, and I'm involved with the Citizens Climate Lobby. I guess my passion for the environment started after my many trips to national parks. I visited Yosemite, Acadia, and the Grand Canyon. And really, when we think about how climate change affects all of us and how it's something that isn't just subjective to one area or one individual, but something that challenges all of us and something we all have a responsibility towards solving.
Hi, my name is Julia Lewis, and I am a 10th grade student here at St. Catherine's. I was also involved in the From Knowing to Acting symposium this spring as a member of the steering committee and a moderator. Last fall, I interned at Jacobs Engineering in Washington, D.C. and interviewed climate policy experts and professionals there to produce my film, Changing What Is Normal, The Road to a Future with Climate Change, which kind of talks about what the name suggests, our future with climate change and sort of the paths we need to take to address it. I'm also a CCL youth and have been working with them to plan the Youth Climate Meetup on Saturday.
Hey, good evening. My name is Chanel Nicole Frazier, and I am representing the Youth at Heart. I am actually a master's student at Texas Southern University from the Urban Planning and Environmental Policy program. And my interest in climate change has started because it affects us every single day. I think that just as well as we see it becoming a big issue right now, it's been an issue for the last several decades. So I remember being younger and getting the Save the Whales totes, and now we're seeing that we did not save the whales when we had those totes. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Devin Guevara. I'm a junior at Sharpstown International School. I think that my passion for climate change started when I was little. I've always been fascinated by flora and fauna and environmental conservation, and every chance that I got to learn more about the environment and everything in it, I took. And with all that learning, I learned about climate change and the threat that it posed to the environment and everything that I so love. In that, I think that my mission and why I'm so passionate about climate change is to save, the environment. But I've learned recently that it is hard to convince people to save the lives of, all these animals and organisms. So I resulted to trying to convince them of saving their own. That's why I joined Citizens Climate Lobby. That's why I'm deeply involved in Modern Nations. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jacob Blackman. I'm an 11th grader here at St. Catherine's Montessori, and I served on the steering committee for our symposium last spring. And I would say that my passion for this issue came about when I started my internship with the Galveston Bay Foundation, and it's just continued to expand ever since then.
All right, we have a wonderful group of students on our panel tonight, and I'm excited to see where the discussion goes. So not every panelist is required to answer every question, just jump in as you see fit. So we'll begin. USA Today and Rock the Vote sponsored an online poll of more than 1,000 young adults 18 to 34 years old. 80% want to see the future president get serious about a conversion to new and renewable energy by 2030. Why is this such an important issue for millennials and Gen Z?
Here, I'll go first. So I think the main, if I could sum it up in one sentence, it's that our generation was forced to care. Because climate change has been an issue for decades, but our generation, unlike the ones previous to us, we didn't have the mainstream climate denialism, even though that is still a problem today. We didn't have that permeating society and making people believe that the wrong science was actually correct. And now that you have that information, it's armed millennials with this passion of justice, this passion of wanting to do better for our world, and that's just solely coming from that information.
Yeah, I would totally echo that sentiment. I think that was beautifully put. What we do or don't do now will affect us, will affect your children, your children's grandchildren, your children's children, all of it. The world as we know it today will be different unless we begin to make a change now. And that's why we're all sitting up here. That's why we all care. We are the faces of the future, as are you.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty important what he's saying, we're forced to care. I mean, I don't know about a few older members of the audience, but we're growing up in a time where it's perfectly normal to as Madeline mentioned earlier, have 3 years in a row have 500-year floods. I mean, we're growing up in a time where it's completely normal for the government to shell out billions of dollars for hurricanes that are a direct result of this problem that we've been causing. We see the effects of it. We're growing up with this.
To paint a little bit of a picture of piggybacking off of what Ishan just said, I often like to think of my investment in climate action and my fears surrounding climate change. I think of it very vividly when I talk to my classmates and it starts raining and they want to go hide in the bathroom because they're afraid of the rain, because they're, terrorized from the 3-4 times that they were, watched the waters climb up in the streets, watched it creep into their houses, watched it rise 4, 5, 6 feet as they, found rafts to evacuate on, as they climbed on countertops, and as a couple people I know even lost family members. So that really obviously takes a toll on a person, and that fear is, unforgettable. That is a lasting impact, and what our generation, and you can see with many different issues, when something creates that much fear and frustration with Gen Z and the way we are so interconnected because of the internet and social media, we, all these different people's climate stories resonate with one another, and we turn our fear to action, because who wants to, go hide when it rains? It's not normal.
All right. Tell us more about why climate change is important to you specifically, and what your mindset is when living in a time when climate change is such a pressing issue.
I could start us off. I became interested in climate change in I think a less than traditional way. So it started with oysters. And so, I mentioned the Galveston Bay Foundation earlier, and after Hurricane Harvey, a lot of people were impacted, but I found it quite fascinating, so part of my work with the Galveston Bay Foundation was breeding oysters, essentially, to keep the population healthy in the bay. And the amount of dead oysters was just staggering. And then, you look at the effects of that on water quality. And there's just all these smaller things that you never really think about, but because our world is so interconnected, there's all these smaller variables that are just hugely impactful in the grand scheme of things. And so, seeing that small thing have such a huge impact on, the economy, water quality, people, that is what really spurred me to action on this issue.
I can speak a little to the mindset side of things. I know for me, it's really scary that it feels like all the older generation is telling us that it's our job as the youth to solve the climate crisis. It's our generation that's going to have to deal with the effects of all of these things. And the thing is, by the time we're the ones in the positions of power, by the time we're the presidents and the world leaders and the Congress people, we'll be past the deadline. It'll be too late. There are so many other generations living right now, not just us. I don't think it should fall to us. We should be the last resort, honestly. So I think it's so important to empower the youth, because we can do amazing things, and we are doing amazing things, but that shouldn't be the way out for the politicians and the people in power.
Yeah, and I 1000% agree with that. And the sign of a healthy democracy is civic participation. That's what we're here for. That's why we're sitting here, because we're going to be voting soon, and you guys, a lot of you have the power to vote right now, and that's how we can put exactly what Julia is saying into action. We are the ones that are in a healthy democracy, pushing the representatives to stand up and say, we're making the representatives vote for the things that we believe in. So we have the power to do so. And so the mindset should be, we should see this as an opportunity, as a tremendous opportunity, and
thank the Lord that we live in a place where we are able to speak up and say this is not okay. We can speak for those people who live in countries with systems that don't allow that kind of dialogue.
And I think also we're all very desperate, right? I mean, let's be very clear here. We have 10 years, and that some people say is even an underestimate of how bad the problem is. So if we have 10 years to fix something, and in 10 years, some of us on this panel will not be allowed to run for Congress because we'll be too young. In 10 years, there's no way that we're all going to be in positions of power because we just don't have the age and experience yet. So the burden doesn't fall on us, it falls on you guys, unfortunately. But we're desperate. I mean, this is going to affect us. It may not affect everybody in this room, but it is going to have catastrophic effects for everybody sitting on this table.
So do you think that politicians understand the urgency of climate change?
I'll take this one. I definitely think that there are politicians that are concerned with climate change. I think that the majority of politicians understand the legitimacy of it, the extent to which it can affect everybody's lives in the United States. I think that there are politicians who, because other constituents are afraid or to directly speak out or take immediate action to fix the problem at hand, I think that they're afraid that they're going to lose votes. I think that they're afraid they're going to, lose approval because their constituents might not be so disposed to supporting any climate legislation or any action taken against it. To these politicians, I think that I'd say, your job is to represent the views of your constituents, but it is also to have the highest regard for their life, the quality of life. Climate change is already expensive. It's not only going to affect their wallet, it's going to affect their lives.
Yeah, I also think there's a difference between understanding the legitimacy of climate change and understanding the urgency, because a lot of politicians, like you said, understand that climate change is a real and pressing issue, but we have these people proposing legislative deadlines that are way in the future, and they won't make a difference because it'll be too late. And then I also think you can say that you believe in climate change, you can say that it's a big issue, but unless you're acting, it's just empty words.
And I think it's also the idea that we have to move beyond incremental changes. Of course, back then it was amazing to get awareness of climate change, but this issue right now has to be prioritized, because when we look back, many politicians just say, well, I am aware of this issue, but it's not on my priority list. But the thing is that climate change affects all of these other issues. It's something that if we don't address now, it's going to compound all of these other things to the point where we can't even solve them. So I think it's the idea of understanding that, again, having the urgency to act on these issues and pass this legislation that will make a difference.
One of the especially important things to note is that for many segments of the constituencies of people running for state offices, people running presidential candidates, variety of different elected positions, our demographic, amongst our demographic and amongst other demographics, climate action is vastly popular. Sometimes I find it mind-boggling why people in power feel the urge to act slowly, to be moderate, to urge moderateness, and to urge, as Franklin was saying, incremental action. Incremental action, it will fall into certain plans. But I think that a lot of candidates need to recognize that climate action is not unpopular. There have been lots of polls showing that even amongst Democratic voters, lots of people wanted a climate debate. And the roadblock for that wasn't a candidate, but it was the Democratic Party. So we see that a lot of the systems blocking climate action and climate discussion, really deep climate discussion, intersectional climate discussion, is not just candidates. Sometimes candidates are the ones pushing for these discussions. Sometimes it's these broader political systems.
Yeah, and just to back that up, a recent poll showed that 64% of Republicans and 92% of Democrats support a version of a Green New Deal. that's a massive segment of the population. And in addition to this, moderation is not going to work. Incrementalism is not going to work. When we say that people are being moderate, that is terrifyingly bad, because you can't have moderation on an issue which threatens our very existences. You can't have moderation. This demands radical change in the way we live our lives, in the way that our government spend our money, in the way that we address issues. Incrementalism and moderation isn't going to work.
What would you say are the biggest climate challenges facing both the global and local communities? How are these challenges different or similar?
I'll take this one up. I think that the biggest challenge to the global community in climate change is that in the future, it's these lower economic sector countries that are going to be most affected by climate change. We're talking about desertification, we're talking about decreasing agriculture. We're not going to be able to feed everybody if we're consistently having to go through droughts, and we're going to have, of course, more disasters like hurricanes near the equator, where a lot of lower sector countries are. I think that, especially for the United Nations, setting a plan to help those that are going to be more affected by it is important. I think that's very challenging. I think that international policy is hard to follow, hard to instill, because there are little to no consequences that can be made, and any state doesn't really want to put any sanctions or anything to further instill these. On the local scale, I think that we have the same issue. The lower sector part of the community, my community, is going to be most affected by this. And there's this climate lobby you were talking about. We're pushing for HR 763, the carbon dividend piece of climate legislation. I think that carbon dividend part about giving everybody a certain share of the money gained from the carbon tax that would be put on, it's important, because there needs to be an outlet from which lower sector, people from the lower, oh my God, sorry, anyway, hurricane, guys. Sorry, I'm super clumsy.
It's passion.
Yeah, it's passion, you're right. Anyway, I think that as a community, we're gonna face the same problems. I think we need to make a plan to help those in need.
Oh, I completely agree with Devin. And just to add on to that, I'm scared about geopolitical instability, because we're all scared about the future of our democracy, of our political system. But if you look on a macro level, I can name some events for you: the Syrian civil war, the refugee crisis in the Middle East, the floods in Bangladesh, and the looming refugee crisis that's going to move around 150 million in conservative estimates out of their homes and out of their cities. This is a huge problem, and this just brings up the point of not only addressing this problem in the US, but making sure our international policy correctly addresses how vast this problem is and who it's going to affect. It's going to affect people in poor communities, like Devin said, and it's going to affect people who don't have the power to change that.
Yes. And I think a principle that's been part of international law for a long time and has been recently implemented into international environmental law is the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. And I spent a lot of time studying this last year with respect to its implementation in the Paris Agreement. And it's exactly that. It's understanding that this is a global issue, but all of different nations, industrialized, developing, we have a common interest, the planet, the good of the planet. But the way that our responsibility plays out is different based on two things: our level of economic development and our capabilities, and our historical contributions to climate change. So countries such as this one, the United States, we've been industrialized for 200 plus years, which means that we've been emitting a lot more CO2. We are the largest emitter of CO2 per capita in the world right now. And we've been doing these harmful activities for much longer than countries who are just now emerging economies and are kind of, so we, in essence, we have a greater responsibility. So it's understanding that as well. It's understanding that the world is not a commodity, and then understanding that different nations have different responsibilities, and that's what's going to push that conversation forward. Instead of looking for equality, we have to look for equity. We have to look to what is just.
What do you most want to hear from the 2020 presidential candidates regarding climate change?
So I can kick this one off. There are a few things. One is that they need to put a lot more emphasis on the time it's going to take to implement their drastic measures. I looked at a lot of their plans, and they're putting out dates like 2035, 2045, 2055, 2050. Those are too late. We have 10 years. In addition to this, massive investment. A little bit of money is not going to solve the problem. You can't throw $1 billion and say, we fixed it. No, this is our generation's World War II. World War II cost the US $4 trillion adjusted for inflation. That means that in 1945, government spending took up 40% of the US economy's GDP. This was amazing for our economy. We became the most powerful country in the world. We surpassed any other country in our economic output. We surpassed them in our capability to do things because of the money we made, because the government was spending money on our economy. Climate change plans would do the exact same thing. The more money you're pumping into the economy, the better it's going to do. So when we propose plans that don't even break $1 trillion, or plans that are not hitting those World War II levers, and by the way, this is probably going to kill more people than World War II, so we should probably be investing more money into this. When we're not seeing a lot of money being invested, it's not going to work. This is going to cost a ton of money, and we need to be prepared for that. We can't, I think it was Pete Buttigieg on the town hall the other night said, everybody's afraid to use the T word, but that's what it's going to be. It's going to raise taxes. It's going to cost money, and we cannot be afraid of that. They cannot be afraid of that.
Something I'd like to know is, I'd like to know how these candidates are going to unite the country to solve this issue, because right now, this issue is very partisan, and it should not be. And we're going to need to work together. If we just kind of work in our own parties, we're not going to get anything done. So I'd like to know how the candidates are going to bring Congress together and propose legislation that can get passed and can unite everyone to pass it.
I think, with any candidate on any level, be that local, state, all the way up to the presidential level, we need action immediately. Sure, everyone has these plans, as you've mentioned, and we have to hit the ground running ASAP. I want to see it at the forefront of everyone's agenda, pretty much. We can't wait anymore. I can't explain that anymore. There's no more time to wait. Sure, everyone's going to want to do a study. We have so many studies that have already been done. So what is it that we continue to study for?
And I think just one other thing building on that is the idea that we also need to see consistency among action. Because of course, we can have candidates that promise some environmental or climate action plan, but we really need to see this action that is really concrete and something that we can actually pursue in the next 10, 15 years. And again, just building on the idea of putting resources towards these plans and towards these ideas, we really have to see candidates and people in power really doing these kinds of things and having this kind of consistency among these actions.
These are all really important things. We're talking a lot about how presidents in their timelines, how they intend to implement them in Congress, in a very polarized Congress where passing legislation is difficult. And we can put a lot of blame on inaction on the political process, but I think we also need to look at how and question and hold presidential candidates accountable for creating a plan to then hold fossil fuel companies, the fossil fuel industry accountable for creating a multi-billion dollar, multi-decade-long misinformation campaign that allowed the fossil fuel industry and the politicians they funded to earn lots and lots of money and to create a crisis that has torn apart our communities. And we need to understand that the blame And the injustices of the fossil fuel industry have manifested in so many ways. In Houston, sure, we're seeing the effects through carbon emissions, but we're also seeing it through chemical fires and pollution from chemical plants. And we're seeing big debate in the city of Houston over natural gas versus just keeping fossil fuels in the ground and doing renewable energy. And we have these candidates who are making plans and timelines for when to get to 100% renewable energy, but they were going to face an immense level of backlash and trouble from the corporate power of the fossil fuel industry. So I really want to know how we can trust our presidents to hold this industry accountable and how they are going to create that economic transition. Our economy and our entire way of life is entirely dependent on this industry, which has also created our the very existential threat to, as Ishan said, human lives. How will the next president ensure that the wealth and the power that comes with such wealth does not stall the process of creating comprehensive and bold climate action?
How do we bring people all across the board to support climate legislation?
They already do. Most of the population supports it. I mean, I think everybody in this room supports it. Most people in the United States support strong climate action plans. They know that our lives are threatened. The difficulty is in, as Madeline was saying, fossil fuel companies and big corporate power, which we shell out billions and billions of dollars in subsidiaries to every year. The problem is not with the people. The problem is with the corruption. The problem is with the lobbying. The problem is with the corporations.
And just to add on that, I think that right now we have amazing Democratic candidates, an amazing Democratic Congress that's proposing these solutions that could work. But in order to get stuff passed, you need to reach to the other side. And if that means that you might have to compromise a little of your plan, then maybe signing a bipartisan bill like the 763, like a fee and dividend, at least putting something on the table where a Republican can support something that a Democrat is doing, I think that's the way to win people over. Because if you look at a polarizing issue as a partisan issue, bridging that gap is the most important thing we can do.
Something else I'd like to add is the local aspect of this. If you guys turn around, there's someone in an orange shirt in the back of the room standing in a shirt that says "Our Shared Home." That's Stephanie from Houston Climate Movement. Local campaigns like this "Our Shared Home" campaign are how we create awareness for the plausibility of climate action. So Our Shared Home is it's about a month-old coalition, it's a campaign that has brought together various climate, environmental, health, resiliency, equity, mostly labor organizations of such nature, so a swath of intersectional organizations, to use the momentum of the upcoming city elections. So for those of you who don't know, there are city elections on November 5th of 2019, and these elections are critical to climate action in the city of Houston because there's this big Houston Climate Action Plan, and we also need to elect a mayor and city council people and people to the county positions who are going to put forth plans to expand transportation, public transportation, plans to work with businesses to transition our buildings so that we have renewable energy. Projects like these and the point of the Our Shared Home campaign is to seed public awareness. And we need to show the people that local efforts exist, that climate action is possible, and that the individuals are not to blame. You're not to blame for climate change because you drove a car, because you eat meat every day. These things, of course, are causing climate change, but we need to not blame the individuals for doing the common practices that are inherent in our society. We need to understand that we do these commonplace things, behaviors, because this is what we were encouraged to do by big industries like the fossil fuel companies, by corrupted politicians. So just awareness locally.
Before we move on, just a reminder that Alina and Auden will be collecting audience questions now. If you filled out a note card with a question for our panelists, please give it to one of them. So our next question is, what specific solutions or changes would you like to see put in place to tackle climate change?
I'll take this one, I guess. So me and Franklin are both members of the Citizens Climate Lobby, and we are pushing for a bill right now called HR 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Fund. Basically what it would do is that it would put a tax on products that produce emissions or that emit emissions in their production. Every dollar taken from the tax will then go back to the rest of the population in the form of a check. That specific legislation is one that I've been trying to, get people on, to get council members on, that Franklin has done so much work on.
So there's a couple things at the local level that we can do that would, maybe it's not going to fix all the problems, but it definitely, we're doing our part. One of them is, as was mentioned earlier, I forget by whom, investing in public transit. Public transit is incredibly energy efficient compared to everybody driving their own car. It helps with traffic a ton too, which I know everybody likes. In addition to that, we can also work on buildings and how buildings are built. A lot of buildings today, most buildings today, are built to the way that they end up emitting a lot of energy that is completely needless. I know certain other cities in the US have already had this going and have this going. I think New York and Chicago are two that come to mind. I believe that have instituted programs that all new buildings must follow certain rules regarding like passive AC versus active AC air conditioning and other ways in which they emit a lot less fossil fuels. And the third is just pushing renewable energy for electric vehicles. That is not going to solve all our problems, but for example, I believe the federal tax credit actually ended on electric vehicles very shortly. We can implement possibly local tax credits that would encourage consumers to buy electric cars instead of dirty, polluting gas ones.
And just building on what Devin said, about HR 763. It is a bipartisan bill in Congress currently with 59 co-sponsors. And so really when looking on the change that can happen now and change that is possible, things like a carbon fee and dividend or something that we can implement in the United States. And it even has support of big oil giants like Shell and Exxon. And so when we really think about it and really think about uniting the entire community, we have support from nearly everybody across the board on this bill and really change we can all agree on.
I think I want to add, on a local level, in addition to, putting more into public transit, using public transit, also infrastructure for bikes. Everyone's super into the bikes. I like to use my bike. But it's also open space and green space. Houston is an urban heat island, so even when people do want to use public transit, because of the way the city is designed, it's just naturally significantly hotter, right? So with that being said, we need to increase our canopy. There's so many different things that we could do, and I think it's just so bright that you mentioned you can't demonize people for eating meat every day and doing these things that we were raised to do. But I think that sometimes when we make an effort to cut back, me personally, I decided at the beginning of the year, hey, I'll take 3 days a week off of meat. Simple, I still get my steaks, I still get salmon, but then I just have 3 days when I'm eating more vegetables. And through that conscious raising and awareness, people are learning so much more. So I think that, there are many things we can do on a local level. And like you said, people are interested in a climate action plan on a national level. I think getting people to make simple behavioral changes isn't that hard. I think we're all interested and we all understand that it is a shared home, shared planet. So, yeah.
One thing I really the thing I want to see is implementation. We have all these technologies like solar energy and wind energy that we're just not implementing as much as we could be. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, of course we always want our technology to be getting better and better, but we're at a point that we have so many, theories and concepts and ideas that could be implemented right now that simply aren't being implemented. And so I think that's one of the biggest things for me is just, we need to start using what we have available. This isn't something that's, we're going to have a huge breakthrough in 10 years. Like the breakthrough, the revolution is right now. We're living it right now. And I think we really need to be taking advantage of that and using that.
All right, so now for our closing question before moving on to audience questions. What message do you want to give to candidates on the issue of climate change or clean energy? And if you could just try and keep your answers brief.
I would like candidates and people in positions of power to know that we have an opportunity right now. Everyone, especially people who have platforms that they can utilize, have an opportunity to make a difference, to make a change. We don't want to be looking back in 10 years and saying, wow, we could have done something. We have an opportunity right now, so don't miss it.
If she was the carrot, I guess I'm the stick here, but so we don't have very much time, and our generation is relying on you guys to do something about it. And if you refuse to do something about it, you're going to be the ones responsible for looking us in the eyes in 10, 20 years and telling us that you didn't care about our future at all and you don't care about our lives.
So I'm going to take the pragmatist approach in my answer, and I'm just going to say that it's more than promises. You can say all the promises you want, but you need to do two things. You need to tell Americans why your climate change legislation will help them, and secondly, you have to explain how you will get to your goal, and that's it.
Engage the power of the youth. There have been various communities, especially our youth community, doing the work to create climate action, to seed, to educate our communities about the severity of the climate crisis, about how climate impacts all of our lives. So use the momentum of the youth and reach out to us and let us be a part of this movement to transition our economy, to transition our nation and our world. Seed this campaign locally with local climate action plans like the one in Houston. And don't be afraid to be bold, to be comprehensive, and to really study all pieces of policy, all actions, and all connections we make, all choices that we make in all sectors of government. Look with a climate lens. Climate impacts all aspects of our lives, so look with a climate lens.
I would say to show me more than a grandiose speech. Like, it's really easy to say, I care about this issue, but I really want to see from these candidates that not just in legislation, but even in, their day-to-day lives, that this is something they truly care about. Like, when I see you, I want to feel hope for my future and for, my children and my children's children's future. So give me hope.
I think not to set deadlines way too far in the future, since we need to act immediately.
I think that what I'd add to that is that, for all the politicians and candidates proposing these extensive legislations and plans, to not forget the community that's going to be most affected by climate change. Don't forget about the part of the community that is not talked about. Don't forget about the part of the community that is not able to choose sustainable things, that is not able to not choose to not go in a car. living sustainably is difficult. It is expensive. Any legislation that passes will be difficult, no matter what. And these policymakers need to be reminded, they need to recognize that all people are going to be affected, and that the lower sectors of society are going to do the most, and that they need to not forget them.
All right, thank you so much. Our first audience question is, there are those that will say 100% renewable energy and greenhouse gas elimination is a pipe dream in the next 10 to 20 years. Since there is no replacement currently for jet fuel and people, especially Texans, like beef, what do you say to them?
We already have a plan that's been drafted and released and up for approval in our city alone for, yes, it's in 30 years, it's for 2050 to be carbon neutral, to be 100%, to get to renewable energy of that caliber. And if we can put such, it's not only, it's a plan, it's not legislation, it's not how it works in the city level, but if we can put something so comprehensive and mobilizing, such a galvanizing plan in place in a city that is known as the oil and gas industry, oil and gas capital of the country, then I think that we can successfully put forth plans to get to 100% renewable energy by in 10, 20 years, 30 at the most. We're hearing it from the people running to be in the highest position of power in this entire country. We're hearing it from economists and from public policy experts. We're hearing it from scientists. The solutions exist. It's a question of whether we have the will, and I think that if we see that we have that will to create action in our city, as I said, a city with a deep and with an entrenched history of support and connection and economic reliance on the fossil fuel industry, then this is actually possible.
What do you think is the first policy that local, state, and federal governments should implement for climate change reversal?
To be honest, about the first policy, we can't just have one single policy be implemented. There needs to be a whole slew of things implemented. One single thing's not going to cut it right now. Maybe 10 years ago it would have, but we're not 10 years ago. But there's an easy way to start, and that's by increasing our reliance on renewable energy and decreasing our reliance on fossil fuels. And we can do this with a common sense approach. I'm not saying we should, ban natural gas and say nobody could have natural gas in their homes tomorrow. No, that's not going to work. But we can slowly implement solar, wind energy to power our buildings, and we can slowly implement ways in which we can get electric vehicles on the road. I mean, these are very doable, gettable things, right? No one's saying we've got to get to 100 by tomorrow. We've got 10 years. We can do it.
Do you feel climate action, like the one being organized by activist Greta Thunberg on September 20th, can be effective?
I think it's important to remember that we live in a democracy and that every single one of us, has something to say, and that we are all in a way a part of the government, that what we say and the emphasis we put on issues will have a direct impact on the emphasis that is put on it by our representatives. So I think that is a very effective way to get this ball rolling.
And just to jump in really fast, on top of that, not to double answer, but I'm currently we're organizing with a group of, and some other people on the stage are as well, the Houston installment of this September 20th global climate strike. It'll be at City Hall at noon. And one of the arguments I'd make in favor of coming out and striking with us is that historic evidence has statistically shown that if 3.5% of the population engages in mass non-cooperation like this strike, then we have succeeded in obtaining the a large enough collective public effort to pressure those in power to meet our demands. You've seen it with the civil rights movement, with women's liberation, with the LGBTQ rights movement. We've seen how mass non-cooperation creates results if enough people turn out. So we really need everyone in this room to come and strike with us next Friday, September 20th at noon at City Hall, especially if you're running for an office. We'd love to see you there.
Okay, so we have so many more amazing questions, but not enough time. So that's the end of our student panel. Let's have a round of applause for them. Tonight we are lucky enough to have several Texan candidates with us tonight who are running for the offices of U.S. Senate, Houston Mayor, and Houston City Council. We know you are very busy people, so we thank you for making the time to be with us tonight. If you guys could please come up and take the place of the panelists on the stage. So, we are all going to ask you a few questions generated by the students here. And you'll have about 5 minutes to respond. When you respond, please introduce yourselves and tell us which office you are running for. And these are the 2 questions that we have for you. The first, what action has this event inspired you to take? And what can young people do today to impact climate change?
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Joe Joseph, and I'm running for Houston City Council at large, position 4. And the question, I want to answer the question, what has inspired me? One thing has inspired me was to do it now. Not in 2075 or 20, beyond in the future, but do it now and execute now. One of the things I've been doing as a community leader and a super neighborhood vice president is build 7 community gardens within our neighborhood to help the senior citizens and the kids eat healthy foods. So our seniors with ailments and our children so they can learn in school. So those are the things I've already started. And one of the ones that I'm most proud of is the one that I started at Texas Southern University, where I went back to school and I recently graduated this past May, magna cum laude of the Public Affairs Department. So I want to encourage you, and I thank you once again for saying do it now. So, and I want to encourage you, don't do like I did and drop out of college and go later. Do it now.
Good evening. I'm Tico Houseman. I am running for Houston City Council at large, position 4. I too am inspired to act now. One of the things I would like to see is all of you engaged and involved in the climate plan. I know that it is preliminary. There is still a lot of work to be done in Houston, but I think it would be a great loss if we don't harvest the energy that you guys have. I do believe that in addition to expanding on public transportation, we also have to look at micro-mobility. I actually attended a conference and I learned that 40% of car trips are errands within 5 miles. And so what micro-mobility is, it gives 40% more people access to public transportation. So those are your scooters, your autonomous vehicles. TSU is doing a fantastic trial right now where they're looking at autonomous vehicles and moving those around the campus. If those are successful, they will move those out to a phase 2. And so that's one of the things I am very interested in, and to continue to work with permits and planning to ensure that the city is doing its part as far as requiring LEED standards for buildings.
My name is Cristina Ascension Ramirez, and I'm running for U.S. Senate against John Cornyn, who recently realized that climate change is actually real. So I've been completely inspired inspired by you all. I think climate change is the most important issue, period, that our country and globe faces. And I wanted to say that I would love if some of you would actually join some of our climate action cabinet for my campaign, because I think that you probably know this issue better than a lot of adults do. But I think I was really inspired by Julia, who said that, you know, candidates can say that this is a big issue, but you have to take action. Or by Madeline that said, you have to move beyond incremental changes on climate change and understand that climate change impacts all issues that we care about. Or Franklin, who said, climate action is very popular with our generation. You know, a lot of candidates that are running for Senate may not have wanted to come here because they said they're high school students. Maybe they can't vote. But I think my job running for Senate is to represent every single Texan, whether they can vote or not. And the fact is that one of the most powerful voting blocks in this state is young people. That 1 in 3 eligible voters in Texas is under the age of 30. And that they feel forgotten, they feel misrepresented by our current elected leaders. And so I feel very, very inspired by you all. And I just want to say to keep pushing, to not listen to people that say, don't push so hard, don't push so fast. By all means, keep pushing and keep pushing fast and hard, because that is exactly what we need. And the fact that here in Houston, Texas, the state that emits the most carbon in the country, and the city that was underwater just a couple of years ago, and one of the largest oil and gas producers in the country, that you all are going to be on the front lines of changing this debate, changing it not just for Houston or Texas, but the entire country. You know, I have a 2-year-old son. I've been working around climate change and doing community organizing. I used to run an organization called JOLT that mobilizes young Latino voters. The ethnic group that most says they want most change on climate change is actually Latino voters in the country and in this state. But what I've consistently seen from doing organizing work is that young people are always the ones that make our legislative officials actually live up to their promises. That they are the ones that make our country actually tackle the biggest challenges and problems we face. And so while I've been thinking about climate change and went to my first climate protest when I was 10 years old, and now I'm 37, you were probably all thinking that I look so much younger than that, so how could that be? But this has been a long time that our country and global leaders have been talking about climate change, and we don't have a lot of time on this issue. And what gives me hope is Texas, because Texas is changing politically, demographically, and that when we change Texas in 2020, we're not just going to change the political outcome of Texas for an election cycle, we're going to change the political outcome of the country for a generation. And that power comes from young voters, particularly in this state. And so I have great admiration for y'all, for your fighting, for standing up and pushing legislators, elected officials to do what is right, and that recognize your power you all have here in Houston, Texas to lead on this issue. And I'm really grateful for your all's work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Demetrius Smith, and I'm running for Houston Mayor. But before I go into anything, I want to apologize to you all for not being here on time. I just come from the County Commissioner's Office holding other elected officials accountable for democracy in terms of what's happening now in my election. And if it's happening in my election, it's happening to the people across the board. So I've been there since 10, just now leaving like good 30 minutes ago. I was the last speaker. So I do apologize, but I can tell you what inspired me. Just even when I received the email when it says student climate caucus. Just seeing that email saying student, I'm like, student. These are millennials. Millennials are taking initiative. And it was a very serious initiative, climate change. I don't hear, honestly, I haven't been to too many, but I haven't heard hardly any local candidates and politicians talking about climate change too much on their agenda. They're talking about more potholes and infrastructure than anything. But I see climate, I'm gonna tell you what y'all did. Y'all made me go to work. Y'all made me research. Just look and knowing that this event is coming up. And I see how important it is dealing with toxicity. And it's a very, very important issue. So even you all taking this initiative, having this discussion, planning this, for all of us to be here to hear your voices, is very inspiring, and I take it very seriously. You are the future. You are our next presidents. You are our next elected officials, our next lawmakers, our next city council members, our next mayor. So yes, it's very serious that I take this initiative in this discussion right here. And I thank you for all having me to come here and inviting us all to come here. But would like to continue to see you do, because right now you have a rally coming up on the 20th. I've already received that from I think one of those members at the Catholic Church. I was at the World Day of Prayer, so I already knew that was coming up. But the fact that you all have this initiative, you still carry your voice, and your voice is still carrying out. But at the same time, I'm sure you may be doing it, but if you're not, maybe I'm missing it. I like to see you down at the City Hall level. You may have been there, but I like to see you continue to go down to City Hall, to the County Commissioner Court, just like you bring this initiative here, take it to those makers, those ordinance makers, or the local lawmakers there, take it to the state level. So with that being said, I'd like to continue to see you thrive for a change in our statutes and federal laws at the same time, because you are the people. And you are next generation, you the voice. Back in the civil rights movement, who made the move? It was millennials. Millennials is the one that made a lot of change. Dr. Martin Luther King was very young when he started the civil rights movement. He was very young. And right now, I see you all, not comparing to Dr. Martin Luther King or anything like that, but right now, at your age right now, because he was like 23 when he started, that's what I mean by that. But you're starting earlier, you're starting sooner than that. So I want to commend you all and give yourselves a round of applause for even starting sooner in the process of making a change. And I can tell you right now, I'm in the mortgage industry, and I know it's a lot of different ways we can actually talk about renewable energy and things like that, but energy efficient homes is also one way as well. So I'm in that industry, but I like to see the resale home, the older model homes, actually be more energy efficient too. So that's something I like to put on my platform as well. But like I said, it's a lot of things, but I want to sit back and hear more from you since I've come in here late. So I want to hear more from you now. But again, I'm Demetri Smith, running for Houston Mayor.
So my name is Sema Hernandez. I am a candidate for the Democratic nomination for United States Senate to take on John Cornyn and the political establishment in the fossil fuel industry. I am proud to say that I have signed the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge for the second time. I signed it in 2018, and I signed it again in this election cycle because I know that the climate crisis is absolutely real. It is happening. And I did not find that out through a Hurricane Harvey flood. I did not find that out through me rescuing my neighbors as floodwaters were rising, or organizing in our communities to rebuild for the veterans, for our neighbors, for our children. These are things that I've lived through, things that I've seen, things that I've witnessed. And I am so excited to be able to share the organizing work that I have been doing in the city of Houston, in the city of Pasadena, and the state of Texas. I have been part of the Houston climate movement, climate forum, and organizing efforts in Houston and in Pasadena for a few years now. I am a mother of 4. I am a fence line community resident. I live in what is called a sacrifice zone, which is near the Houston Ship Channel, where the petrochemical industry is alive and well, and it doesn't even belong in the United States. It's not a United States company. It's foreign entities that are occupying our lands, that are invading our communities, and that are poisoning us every single day. And I have called out the fossil fuel industry for what it is. It is a leech on our economic system. It is a leech on our education system, on our healthcare system, things that we have to get rid of. And I call for the end of the subsidies of the entire fossil fuel industry. Being that I am an environmental justice advocate, I absolutely support the Green New Deal. And that is something that I know that the Republicans on the other aisle, on the other side, absolutely do not. A Green New Deal, although it is a resolution, it is a framework for us in Congress and in the United States Senate to build upon it, to create an economy that is renewable, that is sustainable, that is green, that guarantees that there will be a transition from the oil industry jobs into renewable energy infrastructure that is community owned, that belongs to the people, that does not belong to foreign entities occupying our neighborhoods. It is ensuring that our healthcare system is effective and that it works for every single one of us, because we all know that there is no planet or no jobs on a dead planet. And we need to focus on ensuring that the youth that is here today, who is absolutely inspiring, and I've met some of you before in previous forums and previous town halls on conversations that we've had in organizing around the ITC fire, around the Chemco fire, and having the town hall forums around the city of Houston and the county, bringing up what we call solutions to the problem that we have been having in this area for over the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution was booming in the city of Houston. I have been working in the background also in developing air monitoring projects that keep these fossil fuel industry accountable and keep our communities safe. I have been working in uniting the most innovative minds so that we can come together and put the solutions ourselves, because we are tired of waiting on our elected officials to do something that is not incentivized by the profiteering of the fossil fuel industry. We know that the TCEQ is not doing its job in keeping us safe. It is showing up late to the disasters of ITC. It is showing up late to the disasters of Chemco. It is showing up late when there is an oil spill in the Houston Ship Channel and is contaminating and polluting our waters, in which economies are trying to thrive from. So supporting the Green New Deal and listening to what y'all are talking about is absolutely important. For far too long, parents are telling their kids, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. And I see the children that are here, the kids are here, the future that are here. And I see a reflection of who I am as a parent to my children in listening. And I see that I'm so proud of the parents that are here and raising these wonderful, wonderful kids, the youth that is coming up. Give yourselves a round of applause, because y'all are doing such amazing work. I can tell you, as a single mother of 4 kids, it is not an easy task. It is not an easy task to be available for your kids and to listen to what they're saying, but I make myself available to my kids because they have so much to offer. They see the world from a different perspective. They see their future right before their eyes that is dissipating because of the lack of the action from our local elected officials all the way up to the president. They are the future, and they are absolutely worth fighting for, and that's what I'm doing it, not because I'm being asked to run, but because I kept my promise to continue fighting for the people of Texas, to continue fighting for the youth, to continue taking your voices with me to the United States Senate to ensure that the geopolitical environment in which we are in no longer puts the fossil fuel interests at the center of everything, but we start putting the interests of the future so that we can have a viable and sustainable planet for generations to come. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Kimball Baker. I want to thank St. Catherine's Montessori for inviting us here today. Many of you know me already. I worked for the city for 29 years. You know me by my voice, maybe some of your parents. Thank you for calling the 311 Houston Service Helpline. I like to break the ice because many of you have heard my voice over the years, but I'm a Houston native. This is my first time running for mayor. I run for city council and other positions before. And there was no way I could pass up this opportunity to be here. I love the youth. I love the youth, and especially the smart group of youth who left this panel here a few minutes ago. I've been inspired by each and every one of you. You have inspired me, first of all, because one of my platform agenda items is to have a youth commission to cover various items, you know, from climate all the way to bullying in school and things like that. And so I've been inspired to get that youth up and ask some of you and ask some of your parents if you all can be involved with my youth commission once I'm elected as mayor. Miss Madeline, I've been inspired to be at that rally that you're having on the 20th at noon. I'm gonna be there. I love the fire. I love the research that you all have done. I'm gonna ask for your permission to put your notes with my notes and see if we can get some things going. There are some things we can do locally regarding the climate, especially with green infrastructure. We've been talking about that as it relates especially to flooding, because we know that green infrastructure helps to absorb excess water. and we don't have enough green infrastructure and detention to ponds and so forth in the city of Houston. Also, green infrastructure helps us to filter the bacteria and things that are collected due to the rainwater, which will provide us more fresher and cleaner drinking water. In addition to green infrastructure, I heard someone mention the solar and power and also the windmills. We really are behind the clock on that. We should have solar and power. We should have more windmills around Houston like never before. Now, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and what are we going to leave behind for those tender age children? A Torb City, a Torb Nation? No way. So you've inspired me, not just to talk, whether I make it as mayor or not, to be personally responsible for this earth that I live on and to spread the message. And then thirdly, the renewable energy. I heard someone mention they were in the mortgage industry. The city has already taken several initiatives to build energy efficient buildings, but we need to take the initiative beyond the city and ask businesses that are coming into Houston, corporations that are building buildings, that are building skyscrapers and so forth, to use building efficient products and things like that to help on the climate, to help reduce the destroying and destruction of our planet. The Bible teaches us that we have to be good stewards over our planet. The ozone layer being destroyed is real. I grew up in the days when I used to have an afro. Everybody wanted to have a Michael Jackson afro, and so they warned us about using aerosol cans, aerosol sprays to keep the ozone layer from tearing up. I remember that. I paid attention to that, and I stopped using that. So now I have a clean cut. I grew up during the days, when they gave us a warning. We need to get those warnings back out about the ozone layer and keep them out, keep them before the public. The melting of the ice in the Antarctic is real, and El Nino is real. We're going to see more and more hurricanes because of climate change and the warming effect that we have. And so I believe it's going to be not just a me movement, but a we movement. And now the we is going to include the 16 and the 15 and the 14-year-olds, because we're going to find a way to get you all involved now. Because I can tell that the skills and the way you articulate yourselves up here, we need you on our teams. We need you in Congress. We need you in the city level. We need you in the government's mansion right now, not tomorrow, but now. And so I want to appreciate you all, and appreciate the school, and appreciate everybody who came today. And to tell you that as a mayoral candidate, I am going to be serious about it. I'm going to take in new ideas and put them to work. I will not be handhandled by money under the table, by large donors and all that stuff, which I don't have. And so all I'm interested in is the good of this society and what's going to be left behind for our children's children. My name is Kendall Baker, mayoral candidate. Please ask for your vote November 5th. Thank you very much.
My name is Rujami and I'm running for the mayor of Houston, but I want to first thank all the students who organized this event, and I want to thank all the staff of this beautiful school and all the people who are with us today, because this is a very important situation. The most important, I am a husband and father of 4 kids, ages from 4 to 14 years old, born and raised in Houston, Texas. So I am 1000% with you. So that's you need to understand. My oldest, she's in your age. I hear what you all say, but as a politician, I have been involved with both sides, Republican, Democrats. I've been advisor to many elected officials. I'm an author, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an inventor, I'm a member of the Center of Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. I am also U.S. National Security Strategist, so I've been all over the world. Just to correct the nice lady, the CO2 is the highest in China, not in here in Houston, in China. Okay, I just want to correct you for that one. As I heard about you, As the President Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you have where you are. Okay? We need to see the mean, what he tried to tell us. Taking small steps lead to big steps. Taking small action take you to the big action. For instance, last time I was with my daughter and my family going to the pet store, and we saw a trash in our way. So I went, I picked it up, and I put it in the trash can. And I have this nice lady, she came, and my wife, she's in the back there with my other 3 kids, and she told me, I didn't see that for a long time. I told her, well, if everybody of us, all of us, can do small steps, we'll be moving a long way forward about the climate change and all that. The government will not solve your problem. I'm sorry to tell you the truth. Because you need to bring not just the government, you need to bring the businesses, the energy businesses. You need, as I told before in my work, you need to give them an alternative to make money. I'm sorry to tell you the truth because I respect you, it's all about the money. The businesses, the energy industry, I don't want to say their names because I did work with them too as an advisor. They're not gonna let their billions of dollars go if they don't have something else. Okay? But you have a power as young people, as I told to my oldest daughter. You have the power to make change. Instead of just talking here, you can do action in the street. You're gonna see, you know what? I'm gonna see which neighborhood needs to plant a tree, and I'm gonna go plant a tree. I'm gonna see which neighborhood need to clean up the trash, and I'm gonna go to clean up the trash. And instead, I'm sorry, I apologize, instead of going striking. So what you do, you show to the elected official that you're taking the action to your hand as young people. Then people are gonna respect you, and they're gonna follow you. Now let me back, I don't wanna talk about the international level, I've been all over the world, but let me talk about Houston, how we can do it. Also, I am a risk management and strategist, I have Mr. degree. And I did look to the problem in Houston. Let's talk about statistics, and that's the most important. You have to start from the local problems to get to the highest level. 47% of the CO2 in Houston is coming from the transportation system. Okay? The second one is 49% is coming from residential and commercial. I do statistics, that's why I have to tell you the statistic. 4% is coming from other stuff. So, as a student, you're gonna say, you know what? We have 47 in transportation, we have 49 in residential and commercial. For me, as I'm running for the mayor of Houston and with my 11 plan of action of solution, because we all know, I'm talking to the parents right now, we all know the problems in Houston. I'm not here to talk about the problems, but I'm here to talk about some of the solutions I've been working on for the last 5 years. One of it is we can tackle the problem with the transportation. 47% CO2. We can do something about it. Now, who is familiar with Vision Zero strategy? Anybody? You are. Oh, I like that. You too? Okay, you know Austin just passed it a couple of months ago. I think they're done. Okay, good. So I advise all the parents to do little research. I'm just gonna talk briefly because I don't wanna keep you talking, but Vision Zero strategy, it started in Sweden 1997, and it's a very good thing. But I have my own Vision Strategy Zero, my own. Why? Because Houston is not small city. Houston is spread out. You have small cities within many cities. So, if you put your system of recycling, of using efficiency of the energy, as a lot of kids say, and one of the things I like about it that, yes, you're right. The way we're building the homes in Houston is wrong. It's not safe. A lot of people, they pay a lot of money, 300,000, 400,000, and you are building, I call it paper house. It's a paper house. If you go to Spain, if you go to France, I have family in France and in Europe, they build with strong bricks, with metal. They don't put the shingles of roof. That's not safe for you and your family. They put a concrete, metal, component roof. My family, the side of my father, they're all engineer in the construction. They told me they need to change the way we are building the homes in Houston. It is not safe. Doesn't matter how high from the water or not high from the water. It is not safe. So, yes, I like the one, we need to change the way we are building the homes, but we have to start on the level of the community. And as I always say, building strong families leads to strong communities, leads to strong city, lead to strong state, and that lead to a strong nation. Thank you very much. I'm Ujami, I'm running for the mayor of Houston. Thank you.
Hey everyone, how are you doing tonight? Thank you for putting this together. Thank you to all the students for being here. My name is Derek Brose, I'm 34 years old, and I am a candidate for mayor of Houston. I'll echo what others have said. I'm inspired by seeing you guys take action. I know we had a range of ages in there, but I know when I was 15 years old, I was getting in fights and getting arrested at school, so you guys are a little bit ahead of the curve, some of us. It took me a while to catch up and figure out what's going on. So I appreciate that, first of all, just taking the initiative. I'm going to be brief in the interest of time, because I know we're running out, but there's two main concepts I just want to throw out there as far as the solutions that we talk about, because I do think that the global solution, the international solution, does start on the local level. And there were so many good comments that you guys made that I would love to catch up with you guys and keep in touch. But first thing I want to say is intersectionality was mentioned a couple times, and I really appreciate that, taking an intersectional approach to this issue of climate. One thing that I think, and I encourage, which I think is important, and I encourage more people to look into, when you're talking about intersection of climate and pollution and what causes that in the world, we cannot have that conversation without acknowledging that endless wars in this world caused by mainly the US military and the Western interests, NATO governments, create massive pollution in the world. The US military is one of the biggest polluters in the world. So when you're talking about pollution and contributing to that, I think that's an important point to look into and to do research. As far as Houston goes, I'm not here as a politician. I'm running one time as mayor. I'm an activist, I'm a journalist. That's what I've been doing for the last decade of my life. That's what I did after I got out of high school, and I've been doing. So I'm not here to talk as a politician or to ask for votes or talk about my campaign. But generally, Houston needs more green spaces. We need more urban farms. We need more community gardens. We need more local decentralization of the food production system. We are dependent on food coming across the country from Mexico, from California, from other places. It's a very weak supply chain. And when that breaks down, say from a hurricane or something like that, the people of Houston suffer. We've all seen grocery stores empty out in minutes. We've seen, the supply of food quickly dwindle. So we need more green spaces. Also, one of the important things is being in the center of the Petro Metro, as Houston is known. We can't talk about climate change unless there are going to be real initiatives, both coming from those in power and us on the individual level, to move away from oil and gas. I mean, I think we're just, I think that we're hypocrites when we talk about climate change if we don't take individual actions to move away from that. And I say that myself. Of course, none of us can be perfect. As you guys said, we were born into this world where it's pretty much going against us. And we can take our steps to, use reusable bottles instead of plastic, and these different steps that do have an impact and do have an effect. But we have to encourage more of that. So I don't think we can talk about, or I encourage people to look more into the solutions they can do on the individual level, on the community level, before we only focus on what the government can do. And the final point on that is just to lead by example, which you guys are already doing. You're doing a great job of leading by example. And I mean lead by example, not just in organizing these things, but through the action initiatives. Because I think it's important for us to talk about what we're going to do, what's the future going to look like in 10 years, 12 years, 15, 20 years, and to also respect the tradition of individual liberty that is in this country when it comes to our solutions. I think that any solution that we propose on the global scale or the national scale, we're going to need support from the bottom up, from the grassroots up. So I want to plant that seed in your mind. And the other thing is, for those, because I'm sure you guys have come across this in your research, look into, and everyone here, not just the students, permaculture. Permaculture is the future. When we're talking about designing our food systems, we're talking about designing cities. It's being used all around the world, other places. And this is one of the plans that I'm pushing here in Houston. Permaculture and decentralization. I encourage you guys to look into those concepts and how they can be applied with respect to climate solutions. And thank you guys for putting this together.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Letitia Plummer. I'm your candidate for Houston City Council at Large, position number 4. And I want to thank you so much for all that y'all did today. I learned so much from all of you. I think the thing that inspired me the most was your level of research, and how you processed it, how it affected you personally, and then how you all have come up with a plan. So I really appreciate and applaud you for that. I am running for city council in the city of Houston, and like this gentleman said, one of our biggest issues is transportation, and that is causing one of our largest level of emissions. I have a small problem with our current climate plan because we talk about that clearly in the plan, but that yet we are building more freeways, and I-45 is one of the biggest issues. I'm a huge activist with that. I'm fighting against it. I do not believe that we need any more cars on the roads right now. It is creating more of a problem, and we need to relook at that and see how is that going to work. I do understand traffic is a problem as well, but that's where we bring public transportation in. As one of the almost the third largest city of the nation, we have got to think about this differently. A lot of it is financial. Internally right now with the city of Houston and people on council, it's a pay for play, and that's just the truth of the game. So we really have to limit that and make sure that people that are playing into this game are not hurting us in any more ways than they already are. That is probably my primary piece. So fighting the freeway systems and figuring out a different way of mobility is really going to be crucial for a lot of us. In addition to that, I think that we need to look at other ways of creating jobs and opportunities. And one thing, when you're bringing green energy into the fold, we can actually create a lot more jobs. So I know a lot of people have talked about people doing this for money. Well, let's do something differently that's better for our environment, and also create jobs for people that may be transitioning out of a situation to where in the oil and gas companies that may be retiring at the time, or maybe people in those industries that can't find another job. So let's teach them another trade. So what does that look like? Making sure opportunities with HCC, our community colleges, making sure we have those in place to where we can train folks to where they can take these opportunities and take care of their families. And, not even a week ago, I'm a mother of 3 boys, and one of my youngest one came up to me and sat on the couch as the hurricane was happening. And he said, "Mom, I think the world is ending." He said, glaciers are melting, the Amazon's on fire, and we're seeing hurricanes worse now than they ever were before. For a 16-year-old to tell me that was really heart-wrenching. And so parents, moms, dads, grandmas out in the audience right now, our young people are calling out to us right now. They really want us to help them, and we have to make sure that we're accountable to what that ask is. It may not affect us the most. We are used to driving our big Suburbans and our big trucks and our big station wagons, but this is hurting our children. And so I do believe that we need something different in council. We need something different in the state, and we do need something different from a presidential candidate as well, to make sure that what you're wanting to have happen in our communities is heard of. Our family has a family garden, and it's something that we did together. We grow all of our own squash, watermelon, cantaloupe, peas. Those are things that families can do together in a very small plot of land. I grow all my own herbs. These are small things that we can do to make things a little bit better. When I'm block walking, we clog, which means we clean out the gutters as we're block walking. It's small actions that we can do as communities to make sure that we can take better care of our home. And so I love what you're doing. I love the action piece, and I commend all of you. I am Dr. Letitia Plummer. I'm your candidate for Houston City Council at large, position number 4.
So before we conclude this event, we'd like to ask that the student panelists please come up so we can get a group photo of all of you and of the candidates. And while you guys are coming up, let's have a round of applause for all of our amazing candidates.
All right. Climate change is such an important issue to us and people all over the world, and this Climate Caucus has been an incredible way of continuing this conversation. We'd like to thank everyone who has supported us and helped us in organizing this event, especially our community partners, Energy Media, the Environmental Defense Fund, and Citizens Climate Lobby.
thank KPFT Radio, Ms. Tracy, the advancement team, and all the panelists and candidates who came to participate in this discussion. And we would also like to wish a very special happy birthday to one of our amazing teachers, Ms. Hijazi.
Happy birthday.
A quick reminder that EDF and CCL have tables with information and materials to write a letter to the legislators over there on that side of the gym. And thank you all for coming out tonight, and good night.
Thank you.